that go?
Okay, I'm very heavy.
Now, during human lockdown, lockdown 1, there was a massive influx in the amount of people wanting to keep chickens. So much so that there was a shortage in the country and waiting lists for people wanting to buy them. But for those people, you might not necessarily be registered as a keeper on DEFRA, not that you have to be unless you've got over 50 birds or so, but you might not have had the notifications, nor might you have seen it in the news. So this is a little notification that if you keep any pet birds, whether it's 2 chickens in the garden, a flock on a small holding, or an aviary outside, I guess, you need to be aware of the new regulations. So if you keep poultry, or any pet birds for that matter, you now are required from the 14th of December to keep them housed only indoors or in a fully enclosed netted area. The sole reason for this is to keep the birds away from wild birds. Bird flu is back in the country and there's 2 or 3 different strains, and you really want to keep your birds safe, but also stop that spread from one bird to another, because it could just be your birds that are at risk, or it could be a flock of 20,000 out in the fields nearby, and nobody wants that on their hands, culling all those birds. So for that reason, picked up a couple of bales of straw just to keep this pen dry. Same with the polytunnel. The turkey, you're right, turkey and the quail and a couple of the ducks normally sleep in the polytunnel at night, but really I'm going to try and keep everything in this one pen. That way it's all protected. Now we have got netting on here, that's mainly just to keep them in, also makes this fairly fox proof, but we also need to make sure that wild birds can't get in. This gauge is probably okay, but I guess dropping could get in. So I might just put some of the windbreak netting that we used on the scaffolding over the top. I'm not going to go to the extent that I did in the last bird lockdown to tarpaulin the top, because it's so hard to keep that from sagging and just causing big issues. So in the polytunnel here we've got we've got a few of the birds that stay in here just over winter, just during the night. Polytunnels can be quite good for housing birds, but as long as the ventilation is good enough, and it's normally just a winter option. So the way I do the polytunnel is the deep litter, which is basically every week we just put some more wood shavings, or in this case straw, just build it up. At the end of the winter all of that gets composted. That means they've always got fresh bedding right on top, and it's easier than turfing it all out every week. The quail are not on the lawn, normally they're in their pen and we move them around each day. They've come in here for the winter. Another thing is, if your birds aren't free ranging and got access to soil and natural grit, make sure you've got plenty of grit, like oyster shell type grit like this stuff. It's normally a mixture of shell and small stones, and that will just make sure that they're all able to digest their food properly. And being that it's cold and damp and British winter, garlic, apple cider vinegar in the water just keeps nasties at bay, keeps their digestive system tip top, and just it's those respiratory bits that normally affect the poultry especially. So if you can keep that at bay, then birds are normally fine throughout the winter. Temperature is not the issue, it's always ventilation. So don't over-engineer chicken runs and things like that. As long as they're sheltered, not too drafty, they don't need to be fully enclosed, because as soon as you've got condensation and damp forming between birds next to each other, that's when all the nasties happen. You'll find, aren't you, all the quail have stopped laying. They'll probably start up early spring. It's also a good time, if you've got to catch up birds and you don't handle them that much, it's a good time to check for lice, mites and all that sort of stuff that all you have to do is pull back the feathers, you'll be able to spot anything creepy crawlies in there. Also, when you bring in straw can have bits crawling around in it, so you can get diatom powder, or they're mainly organic sort of things, and you just dust that throughout the bedding, and that way it'll kill off anything. Well, as this is outdoors, I wouldn't worry too much because it's frost and rain going to be sorting this out pretty quickly. That's Christmas dinner. Now, I can't quite remember the terminology in the guidance, but basically from the 14th of December, you need to make precautions or allowances to keep your birds away from wild birds. We've got this netted enclosure. Even if you can't create a netted enclosure permanently for them to be in, maybe just something so for the odd bit of time during the day or even at the weekends you can get them outside in that sort of protected space. But really, they've got to be cooped up, so even if you're buying free-range eggs at the supermarket at the moment, they're not going to be from birds that are outdoors. Not much waste coming out of the veg garden and things now, but a bit of kitchen waste, some salad items and stuff to throw it in. Hang up a cabbage or two now and then, that keep them busy for a few days. You don't have to be alarmed. The chickens will be happy enough, your ducks will be happy enough, and hopefully, all being well, they'll either have a bit of a rest and a molt, or they'll keep laying. There you go, there's your little poultry tip. If you've got any birds, keep them safe, and also if you spot any wild birds dead randomly, then it's worth reporting that just in case. Soon enough, they'll all be back out in the garden and the fields. Plenty of chicken related videos out there on the channel if you fancy it, but that's it. Thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself, and we'll see you next time.
Easy on our tiptoes, undercover agents of the other, beyond gravel, beyond all. Hand in hand, building castles out of sand.